Hello everybody, and welcome to another video with me on Blaze, and we talked about FF14, and now it's time to talk about Final Fantasy X. And Final Fantasy X is a much bigger endeavor for a couple of reasons. For one thing, Final Fantasy X had a bigger day. With the Mod King coming up, there's a lot to talk about with that. There's also the series boss battle, which gives a whole bunch of new abilities to all the old Final Fantasy X units, and yeah, some of them are super freaking relevant. But we also have 3 brand new units, and I'm going to give a little bit of perspective. So we have Yunalesca, Tidus, and little Kimahri. Get it? Because he's like a small one, so play Final Fantasy X. It'll make sense. Anyway, so let's talk about these units, and let's start with Yunalesca, a unit that I did not think we would ever see in this game. And now that she's here, I'm not entirely sure that she needs to be. For people who are worried that because she is a Fest unit, good news. She is so far looking to be maybe not the best. This may or may not be good news for some people. Anyway, so let's talk about Lady Yunalesca. And I'm going to take off my headphones because I'm still waiting for that delivery. And no, I'm not going to stop the video if it comes. I'm just going to go do that delivery and come back and finish the video. That's how I roll. Anyway, Yunalesca has a fairly good amount of HP, pretty good amount of MP, decent defense, a base magic of 219, which is actually weaker than Ishtola, interestingly enough, by 1 point. But trust me, that point does count. As well as a spirit of 210, which is a decent amount of spirit to make sure. So continuing on, her equipment selection is basically what I kind of thought it was going to be, basically rods as well as harps, not much else, and her clothing options are, well, I mean, look at her, not particularly good. Her limit burst ended up being a 7-star maxed out, 28 crystal needed, maxed out at level 30, inflict death at 90% or deal magic damage of 23.3 times mod to all enemies. Does not ignore spirit though. Increased modifier of 5 times for 4 turns of the caster, cannot be dispelled to her wind, dark, summon force, and transforce. Increases also some modifiers for some other abilities, and it should be noted that these cannot be dispelled. But in terms of her limit burst, it feels pretty darn weak. Her limit burst is basically an insta-kill, which would be useful for Rena. Other than that, it's not particularly an over-impressive limit burst for dealing damage, as its modifier is not that great because it just doesn't ignore spirit, and there isn't really anything else that's super worth noting. Looking at the passives in her kit, she has the ability to summon any Esper in the party. For clearing the series boss battle, she gets extra magic and spirit of 30%, as well as 30% Esper evoke damage, which might be just the biggest thing about her, because in her kit she already has 30% evoke damage. She has some wind and dark resistance of 75%, which is pretty high for natural elemental resistance. Bonus equipment for Rod, 7% MP per turn, defense, magic, spirit, HP, and MP by 40%, 50% more Evo magic. So if you're keeping track at home, she has 50% Evo magic plus 30% from the series boss battle and 30% already. And for hitting level 120, she actually gets another 70%. So let me just really quickly add that up. About 180% by my very quick calculation. Yeah, 180% of Evo magic just in her kit is definitely the strongest we've seen. Citra might have a still stronger with Bahamut 2-star because it's specific, but this is not specific, meaning that she can get a lot more summon damage out of anything. She also has dual wielding in her kit before she ends her 6-star, which is interesting to build her, but it should be noted that she has neither any true dual hand or true dual wield magic bonuses in her kit, so you'll have to provide that yourself. Continuing on, looking at her abilities for beating the trial, she gets Magic damage of 25 times mod to all enemies. This is on a 4-turn cooldown, available turn 4. That increases some modifiers for some of her spells for 3 turns that cannot be double cast. A strong modifier, you know, as strong as her limit burst, but her limit burst wasn't that impressive to begin with, and at 25 times mod just doesn't seem that impressive either. Continuing in her kit, she has Summon Force, which is evoke damage of 7 times to all enemies. Again, I feel like evoke damage is probably going to be the big part about her. She has some Wind and Darkness ability. Wind is the Chaos Wave chaining. That can inflict Paralyze on the enemy. Again, probably outside of Arena, not super important. She has a 20% HP and MP restore to all allies, which is kind of interesting. She can increase Wind and Darkness, resistance 100% turn for 3 turns to all allies, as well as increase resistance to all status ailments, which is kind of interesting too. She has a stronger evoke damage in her Transforce. She has W casting and triple casting in her kit, and I'm pretty sure that her creature head ability cannot be double casted or triple casted, so that high modifier one is just kind of blocked out of that, unfortunately. Really, in her kit, her Wind and Dark in her attack ability in her 7-star form, which can stack up to a 26 times mod, that is AoE, also will debuff that element for 0 turns, so basically the only turn that it is casted. 120% is really strong, and if it's just on a strong chaining ability and it recasts every time, it's fine. That means that you're going to have to constantly be using it, but you're probably going to want to be constantly using it anyway. She also has Light of Shame, 5-turn cooldown, available turn 1, 250% magic boost for 4 turns, as well as increased modifier for 4 turns, can't be dispelled. Another one that is Ebon's Blessing, which is a 5-turn cooldown, available turn 1, magic and spirit, 250% increase for 3 turns to the caster, increased modifier for Transforce, and auto cast the next turn, increase evocation gauge by an infinite number, and the following turn increase evocation gauge by an infinite number. I really like this. First of all, I kind of like Yunalesca's kit. When I looked at it earlier, I was not a big fan of it. The debuffing that she does have available to her 2 main elements is very strong here. She is locked to essentially 2 elements, but she also has evocation damage that is non-elemental, which is pretty strong. Evocation damage is a slightly different formula, but even if I like her debuffs, even if they aren't immediate, and I like her cooldowns for supporting her evocation needs, as well as potentially using a summon in terms of a powerful summoner, it seems like evocation will be much stronger for her than her magic abilities for a couple reasons. She does not have quadricasting, even though she has a 26 times mod, which is very, very high for, multicasting. If you consider Y'shtola that we just looked at in the previous video, that a 22 times mod, but Y'shtola can quadricast, where here we can only triple cast. There's no quadricast unlock. So yeah, I feel like her biggest thing will definitely be the X-Force. But I kind of like Yunalesca as being a just, summon damage in your facer. When are we going to get a better version of Yuna? Anyway, moving on. Let's talk about Tidus next, before we talk about the free unit, because the free unit's probably the one I'm more excited about. Alright, so Tidus is Zanarkand Tidus. So Trust Mastery, I want to go back and just bring that Yunalesca to me. Yeah, her TMR was Yunalesca Circuit, which had 43 Spirit and 43 Magic, and also had increased resistance to disease and petrify 100%. Super Trust Mastery on that one. Ultimate Summoner, increased magic by 60%, 40% bonus stats from the Espers, and 30% evocation damage. That's a hell of a Super Trust Mastery for evoke damage, as well as any mage, so especially her. So this Super TMR for her, 2 big things, thumbs up. If you're going to be using Yunalesca, you're probably going to want this. Anyway, continuing on, now let's get to Tidus. Tidus's TMR is a Water 30%, increase 50% when single wielding for attack, as well as 1 limit burst per turn and 30% attack, 80% attack overall for true dual hand. Good enough. I don't know if I'm overly amazed about it, as well as his Ultima weapon for his Super Trust Mastery, which is 169 attack, 1.05 to 1.55 times variance, as well as water element and a passive 30% limit burst damage up, which seems to be pretty accurate. Tidus's base attack is 207 with only 50 points put in. For a guy who's supposed to be doing limit burst damage, or I mean physical damage, why only 50 points? Why not 65? I realize that he is spread out over all of his things, 50 points put in, but I don't know if I'm overly impressed by this. His stats are decent. Defense is decent, spirit is decent, magic is decent, and magic you're going to not be using a lot. Equipment-wise, projectiles, obviously for the Blitzball, and great swords, katanas, you know, armors as well he can equip, so he's fine for that. Maxed out level 40 limit burst is an 18.5 times mod, ignoring 50% defense. It's 36 crystals, which isn't super important, but all of his triple cast is locked behind his limit burst. This isn't so big a deal, I don't think, because his limit burst is pretty cheap, and even then, you know, you start the fight with it. But having to unlock a limit burst is a little less desirable. With his super TMR, the problem of it, here's the thing. Oh, sorry, I should also say, enables skills for 4 turns to the caster, physical training, and Blitzballer spirits, which we'll talk about in a second. But getting back to Tidus, for equipping his own super TMR, he will get a big, you know, boost because it is a true dual hand, but it does fix him to water element for all of his physical attacks, and that is a thing that I think is a big problem in his kit, besides just the triple casting being locked behind his limit burst only. Physical training as well as Blitz Baller Spirit, although I do like that the auto translation has turned it into Blitz Bowler Spirit. That's just good. Anyway, here it is. Physical training will increase limit burst damage by 200% for 2 turns to the caster, cannot be dispelled, and increase the limit burst gauge max. So it's interesting. You use a limit burst, you unlock this ability, you use this ability, and then you use the limit burst, but now you have a 200% up damage. That's fairly significant, I hear. Blitzballer Spirit is a 450 MP recovery split over 3 turns to all allies, as well as a 5 times modifier increase for a lot of his abilities. And I just want to make sure of one thing. Blitzballer Spirit and physical training can actually be used by his triple cast. So his kit, while maybe having a lot of options, has the option of either going away from his limit burst or towards his limit burst. The triple casting of these 2 abilities is also pretty nice too, because you can use both. 450 MP split over 3 turns to all allies is a lot of MP regeneration. With Tidus on the team, you have enough. I feel like you just have incredible MP power. So that part I do like about his kit. Looking at his passes, he hits 40% to attack, defense, and spirit. Wee woo, wee woo. From beating the series boss battle, as well as increase attack equipment 50%, so 50% true dual hand. He has attack, defense, HP, MP increases. He has 50% water resistance when equipped with a sword to go with his 50% water resistance already. 7% MP recovery, which I don't think is going to be super important because you're probably just going to be limit burst spamming. Although I find it funny the amount of limit burst spamming you can do. 50% more true dual wield, as well as 50% regular. Equipping his TMR or super TMR gives him an extra 50% limit burst damage. Increase equipment 50%. More true dual hand, ignore 1 fatal attack when his HP is above, 100% chance of that happening. Starts his battle with limit burst, more attack and HP. and 50 more %. So basically 200% true dual hand in his kit, and a good amount of water resistance as well. Looking at his kit, he does have some physical damage to the enemy. He gets an ability for killing the series boss battle, which is a 4-turn cooldown, available turn 4. Multi-hit attack, ignoring 50% defense, decreasing in water resistance 120% for 2 turns to all allies, which is and then 100% for 5 turns to 1 enemy. So it's kind of a degrading one, but you know, if water is going to be his main element, it's good that he has that kind of strong debuff. Looking at his kit actually goes away from the quick hit. Most of his chaining is Stardust Ray. He has a non-physical damage, he has a water one, which is a 5 times mod, decreases 80% for water resistance for 5 turns to 1 enemy, and adds water element to his attacks for 5 turns. Charge and Assault Fire, which adds fire, and it basically does the same thing for fire, and he has 1 for wind too. All 3 of these are Stardust Ray Chainers, so he can triple cast Stardust Ray Chaining, which is interesting. I kind of do have a little bit of a problem with this, and I'll get to that when we get to the Super TMR talk. He has a physical attack that also can buff 100% increase for stats to allies for 3 turns, as well as doing some more damage if he used Blitz, Bowler Spirits first. Then it's 150% stats all around. He has natural double casting in his kit constantly. He has a random use ability, and we kind of just don't like random cast, but it does potentially cast a Stardust Ray ability at 25%. That is okay. Other than that, in his 7-star, he does have Splash Hunt, which is a 5-turn cooldown, available turn 1, decrease water resistance for 100% for 3 turns to all enemies, increase attack 250% for 3 turns to the caster, and does give him a physical damage against beasts of 150%. His other one, Energy Rain Kai, 5-turn cooldown, available turn 5. A Stardust Ray Chaining backloaded hit that is, it says it's listed as 10 hits, but I thought Stardust Ray was 30. Oh no, I'm thinking AR. Derp, sorry. Stardust Ray Chain. Wow, I got really far into this video without realizing my mistake. Anyway, Stardust Ray Chaining, so just like most of the other units. Man, I've been just slacking on that. That'll be a good one to leave in there. That's staying in. Anyway, Stardust Ray Chaining. Here's my thing about Tidus. Tidus seems like he's really good at limit burst spam. I do not like that to get his 120% major element debuff, you need to beat the series boss battle. I think that is a major strike against him. To get 120% water debuff, you need to get that. As for his Super TMR, I don't recommend it. It goes completely against his kit, which is basically would lock him into the water element even with multiple different element abilities. I get why it's there, even though I don't remember if Final Fantasy X, if his ultimate weapon was even water element, but because that kind of, you know, feels bad for an ultimate. Anyway, it is just, I think that he is potentially really strong because of the limit burst spam and the amount of limit burst damage up he can get from it. But in terms of his kit, not having constant access to triple cast other than just limit burst spam, limit burst spam, limit burst spam, and even then are you necessarily going to want to do anything other than limit burst spam, and just being so fixed to the water element still, but also having, you know, his killers and stuff kind of gone, and even missing some of the Esper stat stuff. I feel like he's become much more marginalized, which is a less interesting, but barely competent for a fast CG unit. So there you go. And now that I've talked about that long enough, let's talk about Kimahri, who is a, if nothing else, going to be interesting as the free unit. So Ronso Guard, his TMR, attack, magic, HP 30% each, which is pretty good all around, and limit burst gauge 2 per turn. Super TMR is 177 attack spear with Jupiter Force, which increases jump damage. Jump damage should never be underestimated, so thumbs up to that. Base attack is 202 as well as magic, so he's kind of poised is a little bit of a hybrid. That will keep his jump damage fairly limited. He also has a pretty good spirit of 208, so he's pretty survivable. His defense is also nice too at 193. Not great, I didn't say, but pretty nice. You can equip bows, rods, spears, obviously, guns, okay, and flails. His armor options are not quite as good as basically just focusing on light armor, which is too bad because he's like a Ronso. You think that that guy could equip armor. Looking at his limit burst, Sunshine, which is magic damage of 32 times mod to all enemies, but more importantly, decreases attack, defense, magic, and spirit 70% for 5 turns to all enemies. That's a pretty big debuff, and it is actually static. It does not matter if it is level 1 or level 30, and it's only 30 crystals, so Kimahri as a free unit actually gives a really solid debuffing for 5 turns, no less. If only he had Queen of survivability options, might be absolutely incredible. He gets a whole bunch of blue magic abilities, including Flame, Seed Cannon, Aqua Breath, a time jump ability with a 23 times mod, which definitely isn't bad. Petrochemical Breath, which inflicts Petrify. He does get White Wind, which seems to be something. Breath, which causes some status ailments, and Mighty Guard, which defense and spirit 180% for 3 turns to all enemies, increase fire, lightning, water resistance 80% for 3 turns. So he does seem like he's never going to be anything incredible for physical damage, but he also has pretty good, he has some okay offense options in his time jumps. Looking at his passives, he has attack and magic, his boosts, he has 7% MP return per turn. He has Proud Ronso for clearing the trial. He actually gets a 50% true dual hand weapon increase, as well as increased jump damage 150%. That should be worth it alone. More MP and attack when equipped with a spear, defense and spirit boosts, HP increase, some status resistance, 50% water resistance, more jump damage up. More to all stats, equipping his own TMR or Super TMR will give him attack and magic boost, as well as 50% true dual hand, which is too bad. I really wanted him to be a true dual wield jumper, but okay. HP up, and as well magic, HP, and MP up, and more jump damage up. So he has a fair amount of jump damage in his kit too. He has Ronso jump for beating the series boss battle for Final Fantasy X. Physical damage up to 1 enemy, and then physical damage a 30 times mod on a time jump delay, which is pretty high if you consider all the jump damage he does get. Basically a good jumper, debuffer, and a little bit of support unit too here. He also has access to Power Break, Magic Break, Armor Break, and Mental Break, 70% 5-turn debuffs to 1 enemy with some physical damage, which is just really nice to have available to you. Can't multicast them, but hey, for a free debuffer, this unit's pretty darn good. He also can give his limit burst gauge to someone else, and more importantly, in his 7-star, has evade 2 physical attacks for 3 turns to all allies. So he can cover a couple of things. You can cover chain finisher damage, especially beating the series boss battle. He can do debuffs on his limit bursts that are no slouch whatsoever. He can also gift a limit burst, and he can dish out some damage through some of his other abilities. And he has a AoE Mirage. Kimahri is an amazing free unit. I gotta give it out to the free units this month. They're quite incredible. And with all of that being said, last to talk about is the series boss battle for Final Fantasy X, and yes, these are actually worth noting. So I'm not going to talk about the units we've already talked about, but let's talk about some of the other units and the most notable ones. First of all, Brother, pass. Waka, pass. Riku, I'm going to give Riku an honorable mention because Riku was an amazing 4-star back in the day, and she deserves a little bit more attention. Physical damage 2.6 times to all enemies, decreases elemental resistance for fire, ice, and lightning 100% for 3 turns, and increase fire, ice, and lightning resistance 80% for 3 turns to all allies. Not a bad ability. Not incredible, obviously a support ability, but a nice support ability. HP, MP, attack, defense, magic, and spirit all get boosts, 7% MP recovery per turn, and increased limit burst gauge 4 per turn. Cool. Continuing on, Seymour, pass. Benjamin, I'll give. Benjamin gets a increased fire, ice, lightning, light, and dark resistance 60% for 3 turns to all allies, and an increased evocation gauge 3 to 4. That's not. That's kind of an interesting ability. She also gets extra magic, MP, Evo magic, 5% MP recovery per turn, and an increased modifier. So there you go. Not bad. Looking at old, boring Tidus, Tidus gets a physical damage 26 times mod to one enemy, refresh 240 MP, split over 3 turns to the caster, enables for 4 turns, triple ability, and it is a quick hit chaining family. So there's a little more love for the quick hit. He gets a 70% attack boost, defense, spirit, and MP 40%, increase 50% more true dual hand, 7% MP recovery per turn, limit burst damage up 100%, and some big modifier increases for a couple of his abilities. So Tidus gets some stuff, to say the least. Orin is absolutely worth noting. He was already still a really good debuffer, and now he gets some absolutely incredible. This is worth beating the series boss battle alone. Orin gets a 4-turn cooldown available turn 4, physical damage 28 times mod to one enemy, decrease attack, defense, and magic and spirit 80% for 1 turn to one enemy. Following turn 76%, following turn 74%. That is a stronger debuff that is AT chaining, which is, you know, fine by me. Like absolute tranquility, cool, fine. Well, 8 hits, 6 frames. Anyway, strong debuffing ability. That's exactly what his kit kind of would like to be a little more relevant, so it's really good here. Increase attack 50%, spirit and MP by 30%, limit burst damage up by 100%, increase limit burst gauge 6 per turn. That's pretty good, seeing that his limit burst debuffs a lot, and increases modifiers 28 times to some of his abilities and other abilities 15 times. Holy shit, is Orin series boss battles increases absolutely incredible. Yuna, ripping pepperonis, but hopefully we're going to see Gunner Yuna very, very soon. Hopefully. Continuing on, she gets evocation damage 20 times to all enemies. That is a quick hit chaining family, so Yuna now pairs a little bit with Tidus. Yay! Evocation gauge 3 to 5. Enables skills for 6 turns to the caster, a W casting of her summon abilities, as well as increased modifiers 10 times for 5 turns undispellable to some of her abilities, and 5 times to other abilities. So yeah, it's evocation damage. It's a decent mod. It gives her W casting, but I'm not ringing the bell just quite yet. She has an increased magic by 90%. Okay, spirit would have been better, but we'll take it, I guess. Increase all element resistance 20%, and either magic of 100%, dual wielding, or true dual wielding, and a 20 times mod increase for some of her abilities. Definitely good, but not quite as good as the next one, and I bet nobody was expecting this. Still not that delivery. Lulu becomes an absolute freaking beast of a character. 7-turn cooldown available turn 1, decrease water resistance 120% for 6 turns to all enemies. There's your water debuffing. There's your water debuffing. Decreasing water resistance 120% for 6 turns to all enemies is a huge long debuff. The only way it could be better is if it was undispellable. Enables skill for 7 turns of the caster of triple casting, I do believe, black magic. Increase modifier 30 times for 7 turns to the caster, undispellable to her water spells. Do you see how this works? So available turn 1, she uses this ability to basically debuff the enemy for a long time and gives huge modifiers to her flood abilities. I believe it's about 130 times mod that she can actually do, and it's for a long time too. Congratulations! The age of Lulu is here! Not only that, but she also gets increased magic of 60%, defense, spirit, HP, and MP by 20%, increase equipment magic by 50% for single wielding any weapon, and 100% true dual wield magic with a limit burst mod up of 150% and an increased modifier for one of her abilities of 25 times. Holy shit, did Lulu just become incredible, really. And last but not least, Jet. 5-turn cooldown, available turn 1, increase attack 250% for 3 turns to the caster, 360 MP split over 3 turns, increase limit burst gauge of 10 to the caster, increase defense spirit 40%, HP and MP 30%, increase limit burst damage 150%, and gives 2 times mod to some abilities, 15 times to other abilities, and 20 times to to some of his other abilities. I'm pretty sure that covers all of his abilities. But yeah, while I didn't think too much of the Final Fantasy XIV series boss battle, because it just doesn't do that much for a bunch of old units, and original Y'shtola is stuck in this weird land of being the 5 to 6 star, but never going to be a 7 star. Anywho, I have to say that the Final Fantasy X series boss battle is absolutely incredible for a mass amount of characters. Lulu and Auron probably make off with the best here. I think that Yuna might be a little bit better than maybe some people are giving credit for, but there is no doubt in my mind that Auron as well as Lulu are absolutely insane, and it might be finally time to build that Lulu that you have been ignoring for too long. Either way, Final Fantasy X looks to have gotten some good stuff. I would say that Tidus and Yunalesca are definitely not 2 units that I would break the bank for, even a little bit, unless you're a fan of the series and you're a fan of these units, in which case one's an evoke damager and the other is a limit burst spammer. As for Kimahri, Kimahri is an incredibly free-to-play breaker that is just fantastic if you need a breaker in the game right now. You can do a heck of a lot worse than this run, and the series boss battle is something that everybody on the JP player side should do, because it unlocks a lot of great stuff for a lot of already great units and makes some units that just never got a chance to shine holy shit levels. Anyway, so that's all for this video. It's been 32 minutes and the music has even stopped, I think, a long time ago. Whoops. Oh well. See you next time.